Um, so if I stay on the thought of the AI tools, where I've seen AI really make a big difference is on the monitoring side. So, um, prior to the advent of AI, you just have to monitor so, especially for larger companies, you have to monitor so much stuff, right? Every endpoint, every website, every laptop, everything that's connected to the network, right? It can be hundreds of thousands of devices. Um, and, they're all logging messages, they're all throwing alerts. Um, and prior to that, you know, you'd have rules in place, but I wouldn't have called it AI, right? So you were constantly, whenever you installed a new tool, you always got way more information, right? Tons of false positives, tons of low priority alerts, right? And it just took a long time to get that tuned, to where you were actually looking at the most important things. And I think AI has really streamlined that process. It depends on your role in cybersecurity. I mean, there's lots of different roles, so on the attacker side, it's being used more effectively by attackers as well, right? So again, prior to the advent of AI, like a dead giveaway on, especially because a lot of cyber attacks were launched outside the US, was bad grammar in email, right? Poor English, miscapitalization, mispunctuation, right? Any hacker who has access to AI at this point should not, that's a really bad hacker, right? If they're still sending, poorly punctuated emails. More in a more sophisticated standpoint, if um, if you're trying to impersonate somebody and that person has a digital presence in the cybersecurity world, again, given that there's lots of different positions, I kind of went through sort of the security analyst, right, who, used to have to spend a lot of time looking at logs and alerts and so forth. AI can really speed that process. I think on the audit and certification side, it used to be kind of just a very tedious process to go through and say if I wanted to get ISO certified or SOC 2 certified or whatever. It was a super tedious process to, figure that out. AI can really help you expedite that process. Well, I think the biggest thing is people putting stuff out there that they shouldn't, right? So security numbers, bank account, anything that shouldn't be, revealed to the, outside world. And, um, you know, any company that kind of knows what they're doing, right, is before they let their employees use AI, are going to write some type of policy that says, don't do this. But it's pretty hard to stop if somebody, just makes a mistake and posts, some confidential information out there. So by far and away, that's, the most important thing. They could also be like if they're doing research, um, biomedical research, um, they might be posting intellectual property, which the AI would need legitimately to help them further their research. But now they're kind of putting their own intellectual property out there for the AI to consume. So you have to make sure you really understand what type of protection you have. Like you would never want to do that for a public, like you wouldn't want to do that in like a chat GPT, right? You'd want to make sure you had your own sort of private model. And I think hallucinations are a problem too, right? Because people are too trusting sometimes that what the AI is telling them is correct. Um, and my experience has been even on some kind of basic stuff, it can still make mistakes. So hopefully, people, I think it's a risk for businesses um, to make sure their people know that they need to, even though AI is making things faster for them, it's their work, its work still needs to be checked in some way, shape, or form. Example I gave you, now we never implemented it, right? But there was a lot of pressure from management for the customer service, right? Because you never know what a patient's going to ask, right? They could ask, "Has my order shipped?" You can have an AI, answer that, and we did. But we just we had, we finally had to get, because it was kind of a battle between the IT department and the customer service, department, and we had to get legal involved, and legal had to kind of say no, cannot, cannot answer that question. the one of the first things you got to do is you really have to sort of define success because there's such a rush to put it out there. And I've certainly heard stories where people just aren't getting the productivity they thought they were going to get out of it. So, and this is really true for anything that you do that's new is right. You want to make sure you have a good baseline. So whatever it is you're trying to use AI to improve productivity, you need to understand like how long does it take a person to perform this task? And then once you implement AI, and is that task actually being performed faster? Um, so you should define that up front as opposed to rushing to put it in and then trying to figure out if um, it was successful.
Last question that I have, bit more of a personal one. If you were in my position studying cybersecurity, business analytics, maybe I want to become a lawyer in the future. Is there anything in particular that you would focus on learning in the next few years? Maybe one particular skill or one area of expertise for someone like me?
Yeah, I mean, I would say at my last company, our chief privacy officer um, had both a computer science degree and a law degree. And I really think this is an opinion, not a fact. Um, the U.S. is pretty far behind in regulating privacy right now. If you compare us to like the EU privacy laws, dunno, right? But there's some push, right, to, some states are just doing it, right? They're not waiting for the federal government like California. Um, but that can be very difficult, right? Because when you have a patchwork of regulations across states, you have to sort of, it just makes things more difficult. So if there's more of a push to have better regulation of privacy, and data and protecting your data, owning your data in the EU. There's something called the right to be forgotten. So, like, if you call up a company and say you got to delete my data, like they have to do it. No such laws exist in the U.S. I know even today there are some bipartisan pushes to try to get that in place. So again, opinion, not fact. I think that that's a confluence of sort of law, cybersecurity, and data analytics is really sort of is saying is it's not as technical as some stuff you can be doing, but as people become more and more concerned about their privacy, um, that could be an area where I can certainly see those three things coming together.